welcome again, everybody. Let's get this started. Basically, what we are going to do today is to hear from the alumni, and maybe we can get some inspiration from their experiences and all that, right? So we have 4 people here that are going to share their story with us. And I just wanted to ask them to say their name, nationality, the cohort they were part of, and the path. So can we start with Ray?
Thanks, Letitia. Hi, everybody, and I'm so happy to see all of you here. So my name is Ray Raymond, and I'm from Ghana. And I think I was part of the first cohort, so from 2017 to 2019. Yes, and I'm currently doing my PhD in Hong Kong, so that's why I live. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful, and I'll pass it on to Manoela.
Hi guys, sorry about the voice. I had COVID this week, so if I keep coughing or anything, apologies. So I'm Manoela, I'm from Brazil, and I was part of the cohort for 2018 and 2020. At the moment I live in London and I manage a mental health housing place here, so very different than academic work.
Perfect. Thank you, Manu. And Gustavo?
Sure. So hello, everybody. My name is Gustavo. I am from the Dominican Republic, but now I'm living in Lisbon. I was part of the first cohort, so it was between 2017 and 2019, and I was in Path A. So I started in Lisbon, and then I moved to Ireland. And currently, I'm a PhD student in social psychology at ISPTE.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Didi.
So hello, everyone. Really happy that all of you are interested to be part of Global Minds, of being part of this community. My name is Diana, but most of people call me Didi, so you can also call me Didi. I am from the cohort number 3 from 2019 to 2021. So I am the most recent graduated in this group. I am currently in Norway, but I am from Colombia. And here in Norway, I am working with an organization for students and helping to create social activities to improve intergroup relations between international students and Norwegian students. And I also work with the Global Minds, helping with promotion campaigns and giving more information for students, prospective students as you. And I am also the chair of the Global Minds Association. So if any of you is interested in the program and would like to get to know more in how to get involved with Global Minds, even if it's not directly if you are a student, but you also can like volunteer with us, for example. That is something that you could also do if you are interested in these topics of diversity and inclusion. So you are more than welcome to participate in this webinar and ask all your questions. That's it, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you, Didi. So as you guys can see, we have quite a diversity of people from the Global Minds alumni here. So hopefully you can have a sense of what they have experienced, and that hopefully will help you as well as future Global Minds students. That this is basically our aim today. So please feel free to use the chat whenever you want. In the end, we will have some time for us to also unmute and ask questions, right? But meanwhile, if you want to ask something specifically, you feel free to do that. And also tell us more about yourself as well. As you know, we are highly interested in all your background and everything. So, okay, with no further ado, I would like to start asking the guys here how their experience with Global Minds program was. So I'll start with Manoela. How was it for you, Manu? How did you experience the program?
Global Minds for me was amazing. It was also really, really tough. I was one of those people that I grew up in London, so very international background, have lived in different countries. So when I decided to do Global Minds, I thought I wanted to get to know as many of the countries as possible, so move around quite a lot. So at the time, Turkey was a partner. So I went I did Path B2 at the time, so I think it's Path B now, where I went to Warsaw, and then I went to Oslo, and then we had summer school in Turkey. I did my internship with the Red Cross in the UK, and then I went to Ireland for my thesis. So literally I was moving around quite a lot, and I wanted to get as much of the experience of the cross-cultural experience as possible. But I didn't realize my life had changed quite a bit. So it was quite a tough situation to be in, moving around and not finding, a place to live and everything. So I didn't really have time to settle or actually talk a lot with my colleagues or actually live with people. For example, I know some of my colleagues were in the same country for a year and a half, and they built really strong relationships and really strong friendships. So for me, I felt that I was kind of like a nomad in that sense. I only came to the country, got the experience, did everything very professionally, and then just left. When COVID hit, I was in my last semester. I was in Limerick, so I didn't stay in Limerick for that long, only a few months, I think a couple of months. And then we were allowed to go home. I had the scholarship at the time, so one of the conditions was that we wouldn't be going back home. But because of COVID, they allowed us to go back home. So I went back home and didn't stay in Ireland. But I kept really good ties with people from Limerick. So, I worked with Anka for my thesis. And overall, I think it was a very positive experience, even though the hardships of the day-to-day lives, like Anka was saying on the beginning, where we do have to administer people from all over the world and different ways of thinking and different ways of living together and all of that. So that's a big challenge that you guys have to bear in mind when you think about moving around, especially studying academically as a master's, because it's very, very intense and very interesting. So that's my experience with Global Mind at the moment.
Wonderful, Manu. And I think you are really saying something important there, which is one thing that fascinates me about this program is like you have to have the lived experience, and you cannot avoid having the lived experience of exactly what we are studying, like global mobility and how this impacts us psychologically and all that. So we are doing it while we are also studying it. So I think it's fascinating.
And
it
can be very challenging. You say that, because most of the time we do study it and we're reading it, but sometimes it takes us a while to realize that we're living that as well. So it's just like, when you realize, it's just like, hold on, but I just studied this and I'm going through this, but it takes there is a delay until you realize it.
That's it. That's how it works. Yeah, wonderful. So what about you, Ray? How was it for you?
Okay, so for me, yes, it was really a positive experience. And I always say that the program is structured in a way that it actually suits the title, for example, global mobility. So of course you get to, move all around the world. And so for me now it's on part C. I started in Poland and then I went to Turkey at the time, right? And so I found the program very unique because of the focus on social issues and contemporary issues on diversity, migration, prejudice. And also I think during our time, we kind of formed a bond. I don't know about the next cohort, but in our time, I think we created a community in the sense that we kind of provided that social support among ourselves, even the student. And then people were coming from different parts of the world. You get to learn, make connections. And yes, and also I think in my second year too, the internship also actually provided a huge opportunity that actually led me to my PhD. So for example, I ended up in Ireland, and then we started working with Anka with the Psychology of Migration project and all of that. And so we kind of get hands-on experience. We were working with people, attending events, and then trying to, just as we said, we lived the experience, we got the practical experiences as well. So for me, Global Minds was really a positive experience, and also the connections and networks, and then the people that I get to meet, I think it was really great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ray. I'll pass it on to Didi. How was Global Minds for you, Didi?
Well, for me, it was maybe the most different experience compared to the others because we were in the middle of the pandemic. So I was in Pad A. I started in Lisbon, in Portugal. Everything was fine. Lisbon was amazing. Everything was normal. Then I went to Limerick for my second semester, and the pandemic hit, and everything was horrible. We were just at home. The good thing is that we were living together, like all the Global Minds people were living together. So we were like, had this community. But it was different experience because we didn't go to classes. And well, after that, well, we all lived the pandemic and like the consequences of that. But I ended up doing my internship in Limerick with Anka. I also I think I learned a lot during that internship experience, really practical skills that still I'm using. And after that, I really wanted to come to Norway. I really wanted to come to see the Northern Lights, experience the snow. I ended up here in Norway doing my thesis. So I think something that is important to highlight is that every experience of each one of these Global Minds people is completely different to each other. I think there is no one who has had a similar experience because we all travel to different places. So there are people that have done internships in Japan or in Canada. So that is an additional thing. People that have done the thesis in different countries, that is also a possibility. So yeah, every experience is very different. I think that is what it makes this program amazing, because basically you have also agency in deciding like what exactly what you want to do and how you want to do it. So that is my experience so far.
Amazing, Gigi. Thank you so much. And I do agree that there's a lot of agency here. So it's a very positive note that we can actually navigate so many possibilities, right? So yeah, it can be challenging as well, of course, the fact that we have agency, but that's the principle. So Gustavo, what about you?
Yeah, so in my case, like Global Minds was both challenging but amazing at the same time. Like at a personal level, like it was the first time that I was like abroad by myself, and also like in such an international cohort. Like everybody was from different parts of the world, from Lebanon to South Korea to Indonesia. So the best part of was, instead, like when you talk about like topics such as like power dynamics or feminism, you can hear a different perspective, and it's actually very mind-opening. And as well, academically speaking, was also very challenging in the sense that I come from clinical psychology. So when I went to social and cultural psychology, I've never seen this before. So it was very thought-provoking and very interesting. Like I learned a lot. But I have to say that I think I learned a lot more from my peers. That like having that discussion and talking to people from different walks of life is the best way to learn. So I think the best part of the Global Minds is the connections in the community that you build. And at the same time, I also say that it's a bit challenging because you're, especially if you're not from Europe, you're going to have some issues because you're going to be a migrant to an extent. So you're going to feel those experiences and those challenges yourself. So you can put in the position that if it's difficult for me as an international student, imagine how it's going to be for somebody that is going through a process of being a refugee or asylum seeker or economic migrant for any other reason. So it actually is it's a very humbling experience.
I really like what you guys are putting here, because yeah, it really helps us to have this mindset as well, right? So that we can, while doing the masters, we can also improve our own skills, our own abilities to do things that will help not only professionally but personally, and it is a transformative program in that sense. So thank you so much for all this, which leads me to the next question. I want to hear from you how you feel the Global Minds impact on your career, because each of you took different paths after the Global Minds. So what's the impact of the program on your career, or what people will do after this program? So let's hear about that a bit. Gigi, do you want to start?
Sure. So with me, like my background in psychology, but I used to work a lot with implicit cognition, and I used to work in an animal lab. So my experience before, it was comparative psychology, cognitive psychology. I came to Global Minds now learning about social psychology, and I love it. That was amazing. I think the drastic part, or the most important part for me, and that really lead to what I'm doing right now and my current interest, it was my internship. So I had the opportunity to learn how to do projects, and that is something that I really love. Like, so I think Global Minds gave me that, like just having in mind the possibility that it's possible to create things, like to apply the things that we are learning and to put it in the real world, and to give something back to the community and to create some kind of positive impact. So I really I am really thankful with Anka in the internship, with the Sanctuary with Psychology, because I had that first experience with projects, and now I love it, and I try to like apply it as much as I can on a voluntary basis or in my job. I really like to work in projects. So I think that is the most important aspect, I think. And in the future, anyway, I would like to be a professor as well. So it's like also some kind of love for the academia, to like being like having that desire to also share a little bit of the knowledge I have gathered in the last years. So I think that is the most important.
Amazing, yeah, because it's interesting how you actually you develop so many skills in a particular field as well, and you are able to use them. And this is not academic, but you can also build a bridge towards the academic world as well. So I think yeah, it's a very good example of that. What about Ray? How do you feel the impact of Global Minds in your career?
Well, so actually Global Mind was my second master, and so I had a master in educational leadership and policy. So, but then my bachelor's was in psychology. So when I applied to Global, I was like, okay, maybe I just need an extra master that will actually maybe launch me into the corporate world. I had no intention of maybe kind of pursuing a career in academia or stuff like that. Then I think when I joined the program, especially in my second year when I ended up in Ireland and then with Anka and her migration group and stuff like that, I think I developed a lot of great interest in research aspect, right? And of course, there were a lot of the migration research lab. And so I think that is where I started developing interest in academia. And so for me, I would say that Global Mind actually led me into my PhD, and I'll say that has actually contributed to what I'm doing now, and hopefully maybe I'm going to become an academic maybe in future, who knows. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much, Ray. Gustavo, what about you?
Yeah, so for me, as I mentioned earlier, like I started as a clinical psychologist, so I was very focused at the individual level. So I was working with people who came from disadvantaged backgrounds, such as in the Dominican Republic, such as Haitian migrants, sex workers, people with HIV, etc. So I knew how to deal things at an individual level, but I was lacking the vocabulary or how to address more group or systemic issues. That's why I applied to Global Minds, and Global Minds gave me a lot of the skills that I needed, not only to understand them, but to actually address them specifically with research. So it made me more proficient at, for example, data analysis, gave me more perspective of how to conduct qualitative analysis. It gave me more understanding of different theoretical frameworks and how to apply them at a group level, but also at an individual level. So I think it helped me like branch out from the individual to the group level. And it also at the same time gave me the rigor, the necessary data analytics skills, and some of the soft skills like managing your own time and doing your, because when you're doing your thesis, it's your own project. So at the same time, it gave you the skills to work by yourself autonomously and deliver a project that has rigor and potentially has an impact.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gustavo. Yeah, I'm really seeing the connection here. Well, you can actually choose something more practical to do after the Global Minds Master? Because not necessarily it's going to be academic, but it can also be academic. And there are so many skills that you develop. This is going to be my next question as well. But I want to hear from Manoela first. So how do you see the impact of Global Minds on your career?
So Global Minds was interesting because my background, unlike everyone else's, I already had a career and I already knew I wanted to work, for example, with the humanitarian sector. When I decided to go into psychology 10 years ago only. So I went back to university to study a BA in psychology, and I managed to shape my psychology degree to what I wanted to do. So I wanted to study with refugees. I wanted to work with refugees. And work with trauma and things like that. So I kind of shaped my whole degree towards it with the experience I got with internships and everything. So when I applied for Global Minds, I kind of knew what I wanted to do and what I wanted to do afterwards. And it's interesting because everything that I planned that I was going to do afterwards didn't happen. So it was quite like I wanted to carry on working in the humanitarian sector, but COVID came and I started to do more trauma-informed psychology, and then I decided to move to London, back to London, where I got a job working with complex psychosis. So I went back with the clinical. I also had clinical background like Gustavo, and I'm working with that right now. But the important thing for me with Global Minds is that especially with my thesis, I did it on humanitarian workers and compassion fatigue and burnout and things. So I kind of managed to you can take any aspect of it. So what I did, I actually talked about organizational psychology, I talked about social psychology, I talked about clinical psychology and well-being. So you can actually mix it all together in a big thing because it's part of our everyday life. For example, today, working with complex psychosis, I work with migrants. I live in London, so I see migration, I see inclusion, I see diversity, and it's part of actually my day-to-day life. For example, I work with commissioners with the NHS, the National Health Service here, and part of them is the Memorandum of Understanding. It's talking about inclusion, how you do that. I work with staff. I have a team of 19 staff where I actually talk to them a lot about cross-cultural training, understanding other people's backgrounds. We have refugees that are living in housing with complex psychosis as well. So it's everywhere. And every job I see nowadays, it's requiring more and more skills in diversity, inclusion, and being aware of the cross-cultural sector that we have. So I think for me, that's how it impacted me. I see it everywhere, especially in London. And you can work with anything, to be honest. So it just built up.
Wonderful. And then there's this question, right? Because since you were focused on the humanitarian work already, did you choose your pathway considering this experience? And what would you suggest? There's this question, for example, I think it's important. So do you see the connection of your path?
Yeah, I think for me, when I decided to choose, obviously I chose when I first started, I was quite flexible. So I was like, I'll choose the countries that I would like to try first. And I wasn't sure I wanted to go to Poland. I had been to Poland before. And I was like, no, I don't want to go back to Poland. But when I went to Poland, I was a child. It was post-Soviet Union. So it was a very different country back then. And I chose, I think it was path with Portugal and Limerick. And then when they gave me the offer with the scholarship offer, they told me that I was selected for path, Poland and Norway. And I was like, oh my God, that's going to be really weird. But when I went to, due to my theme, because I wanted to talk about mobility and refugees. So at the time, I don't know if the curriculum has changed so much. I haven't noticed that so much. I haven't looked at it. So due to my choice and what I wanted to study, they selected me for that path, which I thought it was really, really helpful. And I love Poland. It's one of my favorite countries in the world. I go back all the time. I have best friends from there. So, I didn't even want to go there. And I've been back about 5 times since I finished Global Minds. So yeah, for me, it was a great experience.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, so you guys already mentioned quite a bit of the skills that you developed, the knowledge that you acquired, and I'm fascinated about this shifts and how you can build up on your career, thinking, for example, as Gustavo and Manoela, they had the clinical background first since they're undergraduate, and then they built up with the social skills that were brought by the program, and you can, even change paths from there. So I would like to ask specifically, I know that you guys already mentioned a bit of that, but what are the skills and knowledge that you feel that you acquired the most from this program? And I'll start with Gustavo.
I think in terms of skill and knowledge, as I mentioned earlier, is that I think I didn't have so much exposure with data analysis, like quantitative data analysis. So when I was in Limerick, I took data analysis, and there was quite advanced, so it was very challenging. So I ended up developing the skills, and I used some of those knowledge to like for my master's thesis, and as well that carry out through. And I'm still using some of those skills that I learned in Ireland in my PhD. Like, it helped me a lot. But at the same time, like, I think one of the best things that I learned was were the cultural competencies, like working from people from different parts of the world, because it was the first time that I was exposed to people from all over the world, and at the same time, it tests your ability, to create empathy, to understand people from different walks of life, to understand the realities that are happening in different countries, and also to practice a lot of critical thinking, because the media that you consume, the news that you consume, it's one thing, but it could be completely different in another side of the world. So it's important to take account different versions. So more like, for example, like more specifically thinking, I never thought very critically or more in depth about issues in the Middle East, but my best friend from the program was from Lebanon. So we ended up discussing so many things, and it actually opened my eyes to many realities and made me debate, change some opinions, and I think it made me more aware. That's what I would like to say.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gustavo. Ray, what about you? What are the skills and knowledge that you feel helped you the most after the Global Minds?
Right. So just as Manoela was saying, you can work with anything. Before I was applying for Global Minds, I was actually interested in organization. So during our time, we had the organizational psychology bits. That's why they took us to Turkey. But then I think after the first year, I realized that I don't even like it anymore. So I preferred the social psychology, because I think it was the field that actually gives you insight and then help you think and then how to deal with issues. So you identify the issues, and then you can also work your way around trying to come up with intervention. And then again, for me, I think during the internship part, it was the part where I actually developed concrete skills with respect to, dealing with a problem in terms of research-wise, and then gaining the evidence, and then how do you then apply the evidence in solving real-world issues. And of course, Anka, I think during our time with Anka was really great, because Anka knows how to actually just work and just get into the grounds once there's evidence. So for me, and also I think I had little experience in terms of research, but Global Mind helped me in terms of kind of developing that data analytics skills and all of that. And also there were issues that I didn't really, for example, Gustavo was saying that you get to develop certain vocabularies. You knew there were things happening, but then you didn't have the right words to describe or maybe express yourself. But then, so for me, I think Global Mind helped me in kind of identify certain vocabularies and then know how to even communicate in terms of talk through issues and stuff like that. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. What about you, Manoela?
I think I agree with both Ray and Gustavo. For me, working, I still feel that my undergraduate course in psychology in Brasilia, where I'm from, was very thorough. When I look at that curriculum, the things that I learned and I went through, it prepared me really well for Global Minds. But I know that a lot of the people that did psychology as an undergraduate, for example, in Europe, it was very different from the kind of like the 5-year undergraduate that I had. So one of the things that I thought it gave me skills like with Global Minds, again, like Gustavo, data analysis, statistics, even though I had learned a basic kind of thing, it really helped. I never thought in my life that I was going to do a quantitative thesis with study. For me, I thought I was going to be all qualitative. I actually even wanted to do mixed methods because I wanted just to make my life harder. But then Anka brought me back, to the ground and grounded me and say, no, let's just do statistics. It's the pandemic. People are still, finding time to talk to people and stuff. So I had to adapt that with the circumstances. And that's one of the other skills that I also feel that Global Minds gave me is being more aware, like Gustavo and Ray also said, being more aware of your surroundings, of where you are, of your, what's it called? The word is that, like the privileges, you're aware of your privileges, where you don't see that, you have some things are very normal for you in your culture, in your privilege and stuff. And then suddenly you're in touch with all these other people. For example, for me, I was extremely privileged because I grew up in the UK, being from Brazil, and I have an European passport. So moving around in Europe, I didn't have to worry about visas. While my friends, especially my Brazilian friends or overseas friends, they had to pay a lot of money, especially for the Norwegian visa. I know it was a lot of money. And then everyone was like, and I didn't have to go through that. So again, being aware of your privilege and your surroundings and having, critical thinking with everything, systems, cultural competencies, or everything that everyone said, I completely agree. And I think awareness, it's a big one for me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Manu. And I'm seeing all the questions that you are putting here in the chat. Thank you so much, guys. We will cover many of them. I think it's very nice that we can talk more about the paths and how we chose them and all that. So bear with me, we'll get there. But first, Didi, you already mentioned a few things that you developed from the Global Minds. So do you want to add to that?
I think that what Manoela, Ray, and Gustavo have said, I think is one of the most important things that you learn in the core, like Global Minds. But again, I think also we can develop some personal skills, like being able to be more resilient towards change, or like being more flexible as well. Something in particular for me, for example, was because I was part of this COVID cohort. I developed lots of digital skills, and it was also part of my internship, and also part of I learned to take the initiative, and I learned to do lots of things that I never thought it was possible, like creating content, videos, websites, things like this. But I think that definitely the most important skill was that project management kind of a skill, I think. But again, it was very particular to the kind of things I was doing in my internship. So I think that you also have to be aware that depending like what you do in your thesis or what you do in your internship, you will also maybe develop different kind of skills. So again, for each one of us, it is a different experience, and the things that we learn from the program depends on that, in those particular experience, the country that we visit, the people that we meet, the activities we do while we are in the program. I have talked with other Global Minds students that, for example, learn how to dance because they join in dancing association, for example. When I was in Limerick, I was in the Krav Maga organization. I never did Krav Maga before in my life, and I learned and I love it. So for example, these kind of extra skills that you might not expect to like learn in the program is things that you also can get, but also depends on how much you want to get involved and do extra and to like get those new skills. So that is something that I think it is important to mention as well.
Can I add to
Fantastic.
that, Leticia, before?
Please.
One of the things also that Didi, completely agreeing with what Didi said, one of the things that I felt for me, for example, I know a few people that stayed behind in Poland. They went Poland first and Norway, went back to Poland and stayed for their internship, for their thesis, and they still live there, for example. For me, there was a detachment because I was moving around to so many different cultures, like so many different countries within 3-4 months, because a semester is not always 6 months. I didn't want to learn, for example, Polish, because I thought it's such a difficult language to learn for 6 months. I'm not going to, ever going to use it. I regret it. Of course I do. But, I wasn't going to learn it, everything. Of course, I learned the minimum because I like learning different languages. And then going to Norway, I would never learn Norwegian. But then I had loads of people that in the cohort that wanted to learn Norwegian, and I'm still there. And they learn Norwegian because you have the chance to. So also planning how you do things and how much you immerse in every culture with personal skills, like what Didi was saying. I remember in Limerick, they had so many, that event with the fairs and so many different, like Didi was saying, the Krav Maga and the dance and everything. It's very available. In Warsaw, we didn't have that. So it's very interesting to see that, take it into consideration.
Amazing, guys. Yeah, I really believe that we need to keep in mind always that learning is the formal learning probably is just 30% of your knowledge, something like that, and the rest is basically the lived experience and all these informal situations and contexts that we live. So yeah, brace yourselves, there's a lot coming. So I'm going to ask the final question that we have here, and then we move on to the questions that you guys are putting there, which is basically, what advice you guys would give to prospect students trying Global Minds? So if you can think about your own experience and what you have lived, what you would like to have heard before starting the Global Minds program, which advice would you give? Gustavo.
Sure, and I'm also at the same time seeing some questions from the chat, so probably that will reply. But I think my best advice would be try to be more autonomous, try to design your project or the master's program as best as you would like to for you and your interest. That being housing, do not wait for the administration to help you with that, arrange it yourself, and try to select the program or the path, not necessarily based on what do you think it's ideal, but where do you like to live, for example, and what path or what classes are more of interest to you. For example, I selected path A, not only because I like diversity and inclusion and I thought it was interesting, but I was very curious to live in Lisbon, and as well they had some classes, very interesting classes of community psychology and political psychology in Limerick. So that's some of the things that kind of inclined to me to go for that path, for instance. So yeah, be autonomous, be proactive, and if you don't have a European passport, you need to be very, very, very aware of your migration issues, your visa, that everything is on check, because if not, that could completely break your experience.
Absolutely. Thank you. Didi, what about you? Which advice you would give to your past self or the future prospective students here?
Perfect. So I will just focus on the application process, because what is really matters here, and that is part of my advice. There are people that are already thinking about where I'm going to live exactly, and then what exactly I'm going to do. That doesn't really matter at this point. What it really matters is that you have cleared the reasons for which you want to be part of Global Minds. And that is my main advice, because that was something that I was lacking when I did in my application as well, and during the interview. So I knew I wanted to come to Europe. That was the thing that I had super clear, but I really didn't have very clear what exactly I wanted to do afterwards. How I wanted to apply that knowledge in something. For me, I was, yes, I want to come to Europe and I want to do social psychology, but I'm not having clarity. That was something that decreased my chances to get the scholarship. And actually, I didn't get the scholarship. I ended up in Global Minds as a self-funded student. For me, my advice is just have very clear what you want to do. Give a look to the program, give a look to the classes, give a look to the professors, like all that information is in the website. So if you can already like have like clarity on which path do you want to go, why, and which professor you would like to do your thesis with, and which topic will be that approximately, that is better for you, and that also will help you to plan in the future. But if you just come here, I just want to get a scholarship, well, that is very general, you know, everybody wants to get a scholarship, right? So just have very clear your reasons behind being in Global Minds, and I'm sure then during the personal statement is going to be easier just to explain those reasons, and during the interview is also going to be very easy to solve the questions from the interviewers, because they will ask you that, like, how exactly are you going to use your prior knowledge in this master, and how exactly do you plan to use the knowledge from this master in the future, for example. Those are questions that you will receive, and you really need to have clear in mind. And if you are not good in English, because that was also one of my mistakes before, practice. Like if you go to that interview phase that only 50 of you will have, really practice before. Like, I think practice is key. That was also my mistake. I was in Brazil when my interview was about to start, and I was just speaking in Portuguese, and I forgot completely to speak in English. So I had a terrible interview in English speaking, and because I didn't have clear things. So practicing as much as you can is also a key to feel more relaxed about what you want to say. So that is my advice.
Fantastic, Didi. Thank you. Ray, what about you?
Right. So for me, I'll say that just be ready to deal with the challenges, right? Because there's nothing like a perfect world in a sense. And just what Gustavo said, just be proactive with respect to visas, right? You don't expect the program director to know that you might need a visa to travel to this country, right? Because you know the passport that you carry, and then you know where it can take you to. So I think there are things that you have to actually be proactive and then be aware and you know what you have to do. And also sometimes too, because we're coming from different backgrounds, sometimes you might think that, oh, maybe this is not how it's done in my educational system, right? But of course, we don't expect things to be the same across the board. Yeah, so I think we should try to understand these things, and also try not to isolate yourself, because I mean, Global Mind is a community in a sense, and always try to find support if there are challenges that struggle, because I mean, the program directors, they're always ready to help. So if you have issues, just, I mean, don't isolate yourself, talk to people and see how best they can help you. Yeah.
That's very good, Ray, because exactly, sometimes we get into this trap of thinking that what's happening to me is unique and only I suffer from that, which is not the case. Probably it's shared by other people, and every time we share our struggles, things get easier. And trust me, people are going through the same many times. So that's very important to keep in mind, and you can have support from your peers and from the program and from the universities you are in and all that. So Manuela, do you have any advice?
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone said. One of the things that I would tell you to be aware as well, especially with scholarships, is the cost of living. The countries have very different costs, very, very different. For example, Warsaw can be extremely cheap, while in Portugal can be cheap for certain things. I know it's more expensive for living, like housing and stuff. And I know that, for example, Oslo and Limerick is extremely expensive. So just be aware of those kind of circumstances also. Don't let it shape exactly what you want to do in your path, what you want to learn, but just be aware that with this scholarship, some people in my path, for example, they lived in Warsaw and Turkey, which are very, very cheap places, and with the scholarship, and some others live with the scholarship, in Limerick and Oslo, for example. So it's very different as well. So that for me is something to consider. Also what Didi said about knowing what you want and aiming for, I think that's extremely valuable, but at the same time be flexible, because sometimes I thought I was going to learn certain things that I was going to, that's what I wanted and that was it. And I actually opened Global Minds, actually opened my mind so much to different areas, and I ended up doing something completely different. So just being flexible as well with your learning, being open. And I think the most valuable for me was be aware of your limitations as well. It can be empowering to do so. If you know that, you know, you miss home and you're very much like a person who needs family and loads of friends around, you know, do networking. Like Ray was saying, get in touch. For me, I got in touch with so many people from the previous cohort. So I made better friends with people sometimes from the previous cohort first, before I actually became friends with people from my cohort, because I wanted more information. I'm very much a networking person. So I love knowing more people and getting to know as many of other people's experiences, to know that what I'm feeling is not that unique, like Leticia was saying. So I think that's very valid as well. And don't be scared to ask for help, ever.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. All right, guys, thank you so much for these sets of questions. And now we move on to the questions people are asking here. And I think there are some brilliant questions and really helpful ideas here that we can go through. So maybe we should start by talking more about the paths. So how we choose the paths, how did you guys choose the paths? And what do you have to consider when choosing them? Do you have to consider your background, your future plans? Do you consider the countries themselves? Do you consider the content? So how do people choose their paths? And I'll just open to anybody who would like to talk about this. But maybe Didi would be someone good to have this overview as well. What are the paths? How we choose them? Do we choose one? Do we change them? How does that work?
Okay, so just summarizing a bit, the program has changed as it was before in different aspects. So before there were 4 paths, now there are 3. Before, Turkey was a partner organization, now it's not longer. So just keep that in mind. Our experience also are a little bit different of what is right now. Before, I think it was not mandatory to like mention which path we wanted to take, but now it is. So now you need to state in your personal statement where would you like to go, the reasons, and maybe my advice to rank that, or maybe my option could be path A first and then path B, and why. Yeah, so just giving that general thing. So when I was in that process back in 2019, I remember I was offered path C, but I didn't like it because I saw it in this organizational, because we before had this organizational approach, and I was, as a self-funded student, I was like, okay, I am not going to pay for something I'm not 100% sure about it. But I was okay, path B or A, it's okay. And then they offered me the path A, and I said, okay, this is a sign of destiny, so I will just go to path A. And that was how I ended up being in path A. So that also could be your case. So it's about also being flexible. But the reasons for going to a country, for me, for example, coming to Norway, I wanted to see the Northern Lights, you know. So, or also the topic of my thesis supervisor was one reason to wanted to come to Norway. So yeah, there are different reasons, and this will mainly depend on what kind of things you would like to experience. Life in Norway is very different to life in Limerick or life in Lisbon, from my perspective, because I went through that process. So yeah, you are the one who put things in a balance, like social life, weather, prices, content of the classes. It is up to you, I would say.
Perfect. So please make it clear in your statements why you choose certain paths, and probably it's a good idea to not stick to only one, right? As it can be like you can add more flexibility, but at the same time, it's good that you have clarity where you are coming from and where you want to go. So it makes sense that you connect your whole experience and why you are aiming at one specific path. Manuela, do you want to add to this?
No, I just wanted to add to what Didi said. When I had to choose my paths during my application for 2018, I also had to choose the order and why. You had to tell, like you had to put all 4 paths at the time. It was 4 paths in order of preferences. and you had to explain why that was your preference. So that was also taken into consideration. So yeah, that was it.
Yeah, so Luciana, for example, is saying here, if we can say that we are open to any other path you choose for us. Do you consider that it's good to have some flexibility in general in your statement?
I think making a choice is more empowering, deciding what you want to do and why, and showing why that is important to you, but also finishing with, obviously, I am flexible and I can make, I think that's the best way for me. That what I would do would be that.
Yeah, perfect. Any other comments, guys, in terms of the paths? Ray and Gustavo, do you want to add to how you chose your path, and if there's anything that you would like to consider there?
Well, yeah, so for me, I during that time we had the organizational part, and then that was what I was really interested in. So I was lucky to get it. But then I think when I started, I felt I didn't like it in the end. So in the end, I didn't even write my thesis. It wasn't related to anything on organizational psychology, right? It was more social psychology. So as Manoela was saying, just be flexible. And also you can just work with anything. It doesn't matter the part in which you're assigned to, right? Because I think that it's just, everything is just interlinked. You can just, you can be assigned to a particular part, but then you can decide to just do what you think it's going to work for you in the end. Yeah, so that's what I was saying. So don't allow the part to actually discourage you if you don't really get the part that you actually desire. Yeah.
Cool, perfect. Thank you so much. So another question that is coming is about the internships, right? So maybe we could talk a little bit about that as well. So yes, it's a mandatory thing, right? So everybody is going to have a place for an internship. So the question is like, can it be paid or is it not going to be paid? And if the list we have there in the website is current, and I think it's pretty much current, but it can change. You can add institutions with time, right? But more or less, these are the partners we have so far. But can you say a few words about internships? Who would like to?
Yeah, I can go ahead. So my best advice is for you to organize and arrange yourself your internship. Don't be limited to the list. You can do it anywhere that you want. Doesn't have to be not even in the main countries. You can do it. Some people in my cohort, they did it in Kenya or in Japan. So you can arrange that. Yeah, it can be paid even if you have the scholarship. I think the only requirement is that you need to be supervised by a psychologist, or there needs to be a psychologist involved somehow, even if indirectly. But it's very flexible. You can do it. Some people did it in statistics. Some people did it in more applied humanitarian work. So it's really up to you. I think the list can serve as a backup plan. So let's say that you arrange your internship and it didn't work out somehow. I think the list is better as a backup plan just in case. That happened to me. I wanted to do it in Limerick. I wanted to do it with Anka. However, due to visa issues, because if you're in Lisbon is European Union and Schengen, but Ireland is European Union but not Schengen, something like that. So you need a visa. It didn't work out, so I had to stay in Portugal. So this is to say, like, this is a very individual thing based on if you need the visa, what visas you need, what documentation you need, and the best suggestion that I have is organize it yourself. You can connect it to the masters or not. It's entirely up to you. And at the same time, like this is an individual process. So if you want to go to Japan and you need to apply for the visa yourself, for instance, nobody's gonna do it for you.
Perfect. And also keep in mind, guys, that you are going to have support for that, and you don't have to be concerned about this right now. For example, you have time. So for example, once you are selected, then you start your path, then you are going to have lectures, and you will have the safe environment, and it will come to the point where the program will also help you to do this and choose the best internship possibilities and all that. So don't overthink about this right now. I think maybe this is important because there are so many things to have in mind, right? Anybody else would like to say anything about internships?
I think just complementing a little bit about the payment of the internships. Well, internships normally are non-paid, but this will depend where exactly you do it. There are companies that actually like give some salary. There are some universities that will provide some incentive. So don't expect to be paid necessarily, because it's not like all of them will pay you, and that will depend on where exactly are you trying to get that internship. From my experience as a self-funded student, the European Union has a specific scholarship that they give for doing trainerships. So even if you don't get the Global Minds stipend, and maybe you are only, for example, a partial scholarship recipient, you could get that money to do your internship. And it's around 2,500 euro per the length of that internship. I'm just giving an estimate. Don't give this money for granted, but it's also an option that you could have, like getting some support from the European Union in these Erasmus Plus program initiatives that exist in the European Union. You can also get that money, for example, if you travel from Lisbon to Limerick or from Warsaw to Oslo. There is also a small amount, it's not too much, but it's a small amount of money that you receive for doing that exchange program for one semester. So there are some options as well to get money, especially if you are not in the only 10 people that are going to get the full scholarship, because this year is only 10 people, the ones who will get the full scholarship, and it's going to be the top 10. So that is why I again make emphasis, just focus right now in the present, and the present is the application process, and do whatever is necessary to really state there why you want to be part of Global Minds and why you deserve it, why you are on that top students. It's a very competitive process. And right now there are already a very large number of applications in the system, and still we have like some numbers coming for the following days. So just keep in mind, just focus right now in the application, make all your effort there, and hoping for the best here. That's everything to consider now.
Yeah, perfect. So let's talk a bit more about that then. So people are asking how they can work on their personal statements. What is a good letter of motivation? How can they actually show their best for the application, right? So can you guys share a few tips on how to write a good personal statement?
Yeah, I want to start with that. I mean, I've got quite a lot of experience with personal statements and things. And I want you guys to remember one thing that I think is essential. What you think it's normal for you, it's not what it's normal for everyone. So, I mean, what you take for granted as being a forte that you're really good at, some people have never seen. So really put it out there, really make it like strong. If you've built networks, if you've built bridges like communications, or if you actually did any kind of previous work or volunteering work or anything, really reflect upon the skills that you learn, rather than, oh, I did my internship with the Red Cross, but what did I learn there? How was it important to me? Really look for that motivation and how you put it out there, and how it's like when people read it saying, okay, this person is really serious or would really like to do this in the future, and we can provide that. So sometimes even with the applications, different scholarships, like Didi was saying, in different countries, you can look for your local government if you've got any kind of support or scholarship, even if you don't get one of the Erasmus scholarships. And what you need to do to apply for that as well. I think that's essential for you to feel safer, or even like have more money or anything like that. But I think just being aware of what you're good at and how good that can be, and how don't be shy, like really sell yourself. I think most of the people have really hard time selling themselves, and actually like not, some cultures even have a thing of like, yeah, but that's normal, why would I show off? Show off as much as you want to show off. I think that's the main thing. Don't be scared to show off.
Perfect. Thanks, Manu. I think that's exactly it. Any other tips, guys, on the how to build a good personal statement?
I think I can add to that do not enumerate what you did. I think it's a good opportunity just to maybe go a little bit more deeper on some of the things that you have done in the past. So I think the administration do not want to say exactly what did you like what did you did, just like a bullet points. Elaborate on that. So go a little bit deeper. Like if you did a particular course, or you talk about a particular class that you took. If you took a particular certificate, talk about a particular skill or something like that. I think it's a way to get to know you a little bit more. And as Manuela said, like sell yourself. That's the best thing. And also have an objective, like it's like applying for a job, like you're applying for a specific position. So apply for it with a specific path. If you don't get it, okay, you get another option. But I think it's better to be a little bit more narrow than if you're so broad. It's like, why are you applying to this master if you can apply to anything else? Like, why do you want this?
Yeah, I just want to add just a few bit. I think just as you said, as you reflect on your skills and then selling yourself, you also have to tell them how is Global Mind contributing to, your personal, in terms of in the long-term goals. What is Global Mind going to add up to your portfolio, dossier and stuff like that. And I think that are the things that you also need to make it clear. And yeah.
Adding to that even, Ray, for example, why are you so passionate about this? What moves you in this program? What moves you why do you want to study social psychology? And don't be scared to say that you want to change the world. Aim big, just go ahead and say it, because at the end of the day, you would like to do that. Maybe one day you find out that you can't change the world, but you change different little lives, which in a way changes the world. And it's about doing the little steps for it. But aim big, do be passionate, look for within. I really do believe that. I think that's how you end up showing how important this can be for you and for the program.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. Didi?
I will just add, not only in the personal statement, but in general in your profile. I have noticed there is a tendency of people to focus a lot in academia. So it's like, oh, I have the best grades. Lots of people have good grades, but it's like, what exactly you did during your academic life? Did you join research groups? Did you volunteer there in organizations? All that add up to your profile. Probably if you have experience volunteering in organizations, working with vulnerable populations, participating in a research group in your home university, all that would add to your profile. So if you haven't finished your bachelor and maybe you are not selected this year, think in those kind of things that can add to your profile. Because again, brilliant students with good grades everywhere, but brilliant students that actually try to get involved and go further and getting extra knowledge and showing how interested they are in its topic, those are few, and those are the ones that Global Minds will be probably looking for. So that is my advice.
Amazing. Yeah, guys, I would add to what you are saying. Exactly this, each of us are unique. We are unique beings and we have a unique trajectory so far. So make the best out of it. It's just about putting you out there. So if you didn't have a job, okay, you didn't have a job, but you did this and this and this during your undergraduate studies, or if you only worked and you have nothing to do with academia, that's also fine, because then you can focus on the practical aspect of things. So each of us have a unique profile and we can just show the best of it. And that's probably how to do it, right? So best of luck with that. And on a related question here, people are asking about the interviews. So of course, it's a continuation of this. So if you were selected for the interview, that means that they already saw your uniqueness. So there's something that is interesting about you. So do you have specific tips for the interview, or what kind of questions do people ask? Who would like to say something?
Oh, well, okay, I can start. But first of all, disclaimer, I took the interview like almost 6 years ago, so things could have changed. But it was, in my personal experience, was a very personal interview. They don't care. It's not that they ask you about like define social identity theory or nothing like that. It's very personal. They want to get to know you, your skills, their knowledge, how you can contribute to the program, and how the program can contribute to you, basically. It's very short. It's not, it looks very intimidating, of course, because if you're applying for a scholarship, as I was doing, like it's very scary. But when I was doing it, it was not so scary. They were very personable, very relatable people. And I think one of the tips that I can give you, I think Didi already mentioned it, like I was in the Dominican Republic speaking Spanish every day, so I needed to practice a little bit English, like just to train my mouth how to properly speak English and enunciate. So the best way, like listen to podcasts, like practice speaking English with somebody, with some of your friends, in order like to let loose your mouth a little bit more, because I think that helps you, because you may have the ideas. It's just a way to try to articulate them better in the interview. And again, it's not a test. It's just like a continuation of your personal statement to an extent.
Exactly, Gustavo. I think a continuation with your personal statement is right. One of the things I did was when I received an invite for the interview, it told me who it was going to be with. So I had a professor from Poland, and I had Anka from Limerick, whom I've never met. So what I did, I researched them. I went to the website for the universities. I looked at what they published and what they, what I would like to do, and how those different, like even in different universities, for example, Turkey and stuff. If you look around, obviously Turkey is not that, so ignore what I said. But like ISTE and Turkey, look at the professors in the program, see who heads there, what kind of research do they do? So when you're more familiarized with the work and how much it can help you grow as an academic or as a professional. For me, when I did my interview, I really thought I was going to continue with academia, and I took a pause since 2020. So I wanted more field experience, I wanted more hands-on experience, but I'm considering going back to academia now. So it doesn't, just because you close one door, it doesn't necessarily mean that another one is not going to open, like you can do whatever you want, but just for the interview, aim for getting to know people. They're just, just because they're professors and they're like going to probably decide if you're going to be accepted or not, or if you're going to go forward, they still, again, want to just know how good this is for you, or how you would add to the program. So yeah, be familiarized with yourself with it.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, so there were a few questions also in terms of like tips on the places and housing and things like that. I would just go back to what Gustavo said before about the agency. It is pretty much the case that you guys will need to take care of everything in your life. Nobody is going to do this for you exactly, so you can find support, but basically it is very important that people are very organized and they know, like, get informed of visa requirements, accommodation situations. For example, we know that right now in Limerick, things are not very good in terms of accommodation. It's a bit scary even because there's not so many places available. So, but yeah, we can definitely do like support, peer support, and reach out to people so that we can do this together. And we can share tips, we can share information, but basically you are responsible for your own moving countries, doing the whole thing, right? Do you want to add anything about tips, like in terms of places, housing, things related to that?
Well, so I'll say that I think Global Mind will try to give you as much of information and maybe sources in terms of where to find accommodation and stuff like that. And also, I think during our time, it's like most of us, we actually found, we looked for accommodation on our own. So for example, we were actually prepared. Even though we hadn't met, we were just talking through Facebook, and then we can just look for a house and then we share. So for me, it took a while before I got to Warsaw, but then I was lucky enough because one of my colleagues had managed to get a place, and then we just did send them money and stuff like that. So by the time I got to Warsaw, I had my room and everything like that. And some of other guys to end up staying in the same apartment. So once you get admitted, just try talking to people. Hey, have you found a place? Maybe let's start looking and stuff like that. And then I think we can just get through it. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I had the same experience with Ray when I went to Warsaw, because we had a Facebook group as well once we got accepted, and we shared the paths. And so I got together with 2 other people from the cohort, and we rented a flat in Warsaw, like a 3-bedroom flat ourselves. Some other people didn't do that, so they just rented rooms and some different, like we shared some links on how to get accommodation. Unlike many of the people from the from Global Minds, I didn't live in student accommodation at all. So I know Limerick gives that option and Oslo gives that option, and I didn't live in those student accommodations. But I would like to have done. I think it does integrate you a little bit better, and you have more similarities with your peers and your colleagues and stuff. So I think it does help to integrate and events and stuff rather than being more isolated in private places. So
cool, great, thank you guys.